poisonous, fanatical, death cult. Those were some of the strong words coming from Washington as U.S. President Barack Obama and British Prime Minister David Cameron pledged to tackle violent extremism. The two leaders announced the joint venture after meetings at the White House. And that's where we find CCTV's Nathan King. Nathan, what can you tell us about a plan for joint cyber war games?
Yeah, that was the big news of the day here at the White House, is that both Washington and London plan to create cyber cells on both sides of the Atlantic to basically war game cybersecurity. Their first war game will be a simulated attack on the City of London, the financial centre, and they'll also do the same thing with American banks. This is all about getting into fighting the hacking of the future. But as you just said, the threat of the here and now today, very much Islamic fundamentalism.
In the wake of the attacks in Paris, this was a show of solidarity against what the British Prime Minister called the poisonous death cult of Islamic extremism.
We continue to stand unequivocally, not only with our French friends and allies, but with also all of our partners who are dealing with this scourge.
We do face a very serious Islamist extremist terrorist threat in Europe, in America, across the world. I'm quite convinced we will come through it and we will overcome it, because in the end, the values that we hold to, of freedom, of democracy, of having open and tolerant societies, these are the strongest values there can be. And in the end, we will come through.
Part of that fight for the British Prime Minister is the ability to tap into encrypted communications. Cameron wanted to use this trip to get US President Obama to apply pressure on US tech companies to allow government access. It's not clear whether he got what he wanted. There are also differences over the ambitious free trade deal, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP. Both leaders said they hoped that it could be finalised this year. But another deadline looms. In a few months, Iran and world powers have to finalise a deal on Tehran's nuclear programme. Negotiations are on a knife edge. And the US Congress, meanwhile, including key Obama allies, are considering additional sanctions against Iran. The British Prime Minister took the unusual step of contacting US senators to ask them to hold back. President Obama warned any congressional moves could blow up the talks.
And I'm asking Congress to hold off, because our negotiators, our partners, those who are most intimately involved in this, assess that it will jeopardize the possibility of resolving providing a diplomatic solution to one of the most difficult and long-lasting national security problems that we've faced in a very long time. And Congress needs to show patience.
The US and UK leaders also talked about a new international task force to battle pandemics like Ebola, the need to stand together over Russia when it comes to Ukraine, and ways to de-radicalize Muslim youth.
When it comes to terrorism, President Barack Obama said that the UK and US relationship when it comes to cooperation was flawless. However, in the case of the Paris attacks on the Charlie Hebdo magazine, both of the gunmen were known to US and UK authorities. They were on watch lists and no-fly lists. So there are still many unanswered questions about how these two men, known to the authorities behind me and the British Prime Minister, did what they did.
And you know, of course, this comes, as you said, last week, the Paris attacks, these raids in Europe. Did they talk at all about concrete steps that they may suggest to combat radical Islam? Is there more that they can do?
You know, it's interesting. Both of them agreed there is not just a military solution, even though they're obviously battling ISIL in Iraq and Syria. There was lots of talk about de-radicalizing Muslim youth within the UK, within the US. And actually, President Obama here in the US said, and this may annoy his French colleagues, that American Muslims are much more assimilated here than they seem to be in France as well. So he wants to take much more steps to try and bring these potentially radicalized youth back into the communities and believe in the Republic of France, the United States, rather than seek fame and fortune with jihadists in Syria or Iraq.